First, we will look at the definition of the term illusion of competence. The term illusion of competence is made up of two words. The first word is illusion and the second word is competence. The definition of the word illusion is a wrong belief, a wrong perception, or to deceive yourself that you know something and you can do it efficiently and effectively. And the word competence simply means that the ability to do something successfully and efficiently or effectively. Now, by combining the definition of these two words, we can get the definition of the term illusion of competence. Therefore, illusion of competence simply means that having a false belief or having a wrong perception that you can do something successfully and effectively, and in reality you cannot. Therefore, this is a situation where you have the belief or you have the perception that you are able to do something successfully and effectively, but in reality, when you are given whatever you think you can do it successfully, you cannot do it. That is generally what illusion of competence means. Now, what is the meaning of illusion of competence in learning? When we come to the context of learning, what does the term illusions of competence mean? When it comes to learning, illusions of competence simply mean that fooling yourself that you understand or you have mastered the material which you are learning, yet you have not. Next, let us look at some common illusions of competence in learning. They are three. The first one is passive rereading. Passive rereading, this is when you just read the material which you are learning, or you just read through the notes, and after reading through the notes, you think that you have already understood and mastered the notes which you have read. That is an illusion of competence. The only time rereading becomes an effective method of learning is when you space your rereading. You read in one study session, then you give it some time, and you reread the material which you have read again in another study session. Now you do it as an exercise in spaced repetition. If you do rereading as an exercise in spaced repetition, in that way, it can be an effective method of learning. But if you keep on rereading the notes or the materials which you are learning during the same study session, that is an effective method of learning and it is a waste of your study time. The second common illusion of competence is drawing concept maps or mind maps. Sometimes students have this habit of writing whatever they are reading using concepts or mind maps. Concept and mind map, this is a way of summarizing whatever you are reading by establishing connection between different concepts or different ideas in the material which you are reading. By simply drawing those mind maps and thinking that you have understood and mastered the material which you are learning is an illusion of competence. You will be fooling yourself that you have understood and you have mastered the material which you are learning by drawing the concept maps or the mind maps, and yet you have not. And the third common illusion of competence in learning is highlighting and underlining. This is very common among students. Most students like highlighting and underlining what they are revising or what they are learning. Highlighting and underlining is not bad, but you must be very careful when you are highlighting or underlining the material which you are learning. Other than highlighting and underlining being an illusion of competence, it can also be misleading if not done properly. How can it be misleading? Let's say you are reading through the material and you just highlight points randomly. Now what will happen is, when you are revising the material again, you tend to just read whatever you have highlighted or underlined. And this may alter the meaning of the material which you are trying to learn. Therefore, when you want to highlight or underline, it is good to first read through the material or read through the notes and try to find out the main points and only highlight those main points in each paragraph or in each section of the material which you are trying to learn. Now those are the three common illusions of competence. Now the next thing is, how can we avoid this illusion of competence? How can we stop fooling ourselves that we are understanding and mastering the materials which we are learning and yet we are not? There are two main ways in which we can avoid the illusions of competence. The first one, which has been recommended by psychologists, is active recall. Active recall is the best way to avoid illusion of competence. What is active recall? Active recall, this is when you close your book after reading, or you look away from the material which you are reading and try to retrieve whatever you have studied or you have learned. By doing this, you will be able to know the material or the concepts which you have mastered and the concepts which you have not mastered. You will also be able to establish if you have understood whatever you are reading. Now that is active recall. Just when you are reading, let's say, a topic or a subtopic, at the end of your study session, it is good to close the book or to look away from the material which you are studying and try to retrieve what you are studying. If you are able to retrieve the main points, or if you are able to explain whatever you are studying, then you will know that you have mastered and you have understood the material which you are learning. The second way to avoid illusions of competence is tests. And the test can either be informal or formal. Informal test, this is when you test yourself at the end of a study session. Let's say you are reading through a subtopic. At the end of that subtopic, try to look for some questions and try to solve those questions related to the subtopic which you are reading or studying. If you are able to tackle the questions related to whatever material you are revising, then you will know that you have understood and mastered the material. If it is in mathematics, after learning a certain method of solving a problem or a certain formula, it is good to look for examples of questions related to that formula or that method of solving the mathematical problems and try to solve them. If you can solve the problems, then you will know that you have understood and you know how to apply the formula to solve the problems. That is what I mean by informal testing or testing yourself. And the good thing is, in most textbooks, at the end of a topic or a subtopic, there are some revision questions. Therefore, as a learner, it is good to tackle those revision questions. The purpose of those revision questions is to gauge yourself if you have really understood and mastered the material which you are learning. And don't be afraid of making mistakes. It is only through making mistakes you will be able to know that what you have understood and what you have not understood, or what you have mastered and what you have not mastered. Then it will be an opportunity for you to go back into the material which you are learning and improve on the areas which you have not mastered or which you have not understood. Then we have the formal tests. Formal tests, these are the continuous assessment tests which you are given at the end of topics or at the end of a study session. You can be given a continuous assessment to gauge yourself and to see if you have really understood and mastered the material which you have learned. Or the formal test can be the summative assessment at the end of a study period in form of exams. And by doing these tests or doing these exams, you will be able now to gauge if you have understood the material which you have learned or not. You will be able to know if you have mastered the materials which you have learned or not. Therefore, active recall and formal or informal test, those are the two ways in which we can avoid illusions of competence. Now, to summarize, we have seen what illusions of competence are, and we have given the three main examples of illusion of competence. That is passive rereading, highlighting and underlining, drawing concepts or mind maps. Those are some of the common illusion of competence which tend to make us believe that we have learned or we have understood and mastered whatever we are learning. And I have given two ways in which we can avoid illusions of competence. One of the best ways to avoid illusion of competence is active recall, and this is the best method of learning, or it is one of the best learning strategies. If you want to learn deeply and understand and master the material which you are learning, it is good to do active recall. And another way is testing yourself. It can be informal, which you can do it yourself, or formal in form of cards and exams.